powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you today by our friends over at the AC Airport. Plan your summer vacation now. Spirit Airlines is offering nonstop flights from Atlantic City International to Boston, Atlanta, San Juan, Miami, and other exciting destinations. Visit spirit.com. Geoff Mosher is here from InsideTheBirds.com. Got any summer trip planned there, Geoff Mosher, before the football season gets underway?
No, not for the summer. I actually have a fall trip or late fall trip planned.
Figure you'd be fitting them in before this exciting season gets underway.
Yeah, well, it's hard because training camp, and by the way, you're going to have to bear with me. I've got some kind of voice throat thing going on. But training camp begins middle of July. So really my summer is June and maybe the first 2 weeks of July. So we do some shore.
We lost the
stuff.
We got you, I think. We were a little frozen there for a second, but all right, so you do a little seashore this summer. We got training camp coming up at the end of the summer, but before we get there, we got a lot of stuff that is happening. I want to get your thoughts on the schedule, Moch. We didn't get to hear your take on how you're navigating your way through this schedule, some of the things that you see in this schedule, some of the things that you like, some of the things you don't like. We talked with Adam on Friday, some of the little quirks that he saw in the schedule. So give me some of the highlights of the schedule from your perspective.
Yeah, one of the things that jumped out is just, to me, is that there's not, outside of the Packers, there just isn't a team on the schedule that you feel like, man, that team could be in the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean that a bunch of teams that they play this year can't be in the Super Bowl or won't be improved. But when you look at last year, when you were playing Tampa Bay, you had Kansas City, you had, was Green Bay on the schedule last year? No, there was another team that was really pretty good that I'm just not thinking of, along with Tampa Bay and Kansas City. And, of course, Dallas, you knew, was going to be a tough team in the division. They'd have to play twice. So I felt like that, the only team on the schedule this year that has like a really elite quarterback is the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And then everybody else is sort of like a team that's in some kind of transition or trying to build up towards something.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about with Adam, too, the fact that no back-to-back road games for the first, 13 weeks of the season. So you don't have to do any road trips anywhere like crazy like that. You do have 3 straight road games, 14, 15, 16, late in the year. But the point you make about Aaron Rodgers, I was going through the schedule today, and I'm looking at, going through quarterbacks. Which quarterbacks? Aaron Rodgers is really the only quarterback in that schedule. Kyler Murray might be the next best guy, or Dak Prescott, really, I guess. Give him some credit, too. He might be the second best quarterback they face the whole season.
He really might be. And then there are some certain, uncertains, like year 2 guys or year 1 guys. You have no idea if they're going to take a huge step. For example, Justin Fields, week 15 at Chicago. I don't think Chicago strikes a lot of fear in people ordinarily, but you never know with year 2 with a guy like that. I mean, he could be as good as Jalen Hurts was last year, if not better. And that's a home game for Chicago. So we'll see on that. But when you look at the schedule in totality, Mike, to me, the schedule really becomes all about their late November, early December games. Week 10, Washington, week 11, Indianapolis, week 12, Green Bay, week 13, Tennessee. That's probably their most difficult stretch, especially, Matt Ryan may not be the elite anymore, but maybe on that Colts team, he has a nice little renaissance and is a lot better of a quarter. And not that he was bad last year. He was on a really bad team. But you put a Colts team around him, and maybe you're getting something more close to the Matt Ryan of 5 or 6 years ago. He's still a good quarterback.
Yeah, he would be another guy who I guess, has been a guy who's had success. But you're right. I mean, last year you were trying to go through the games. They played Kansas City, Tampa Bay. They played the Chargers, so you had to face Herbert in there as well.
Right.
You had San Francisco early in the season. Obviously, they ended up going to the NFC Championship. You played Matt Ryan. So you played Carr. they definitely played a higher level of quarterback last year than the ones you're playing this year. And keep in mind, you're playing Pittsburgh and no more Ben Roethlisberger. You might get Kenny Pickett, a rookie, or you're getting Mitch Trubisky, who has had a very nondescript career. So I going back through here, I was like, man, I'm trying to look at these quarterbacks, and I'm thinking the only guy they really got to worry about is Aaron Rodgers. And everybody else, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, I guess you mentioned Fields. These are guys who are mobile guys, but nobody is like this high-level Tom Brady, pick-you-apart type of passer. And that is one big standout that I took over the weekend looking through this, because I looked at 10 players or coaches that are coming to just Philadelphia to play, and I'm thinking, man, the home crowd is not getting welcomed by very many big quarterbacks this year.
No, and there are some debatable names. Kirk Cousins, which is week 2, has sliced the Eagles up before, and his numbers are always very good. There's kind of a narrative about him not being that good, and that's fine. People can have their opinions, but he's got a new head coach in Kevin O'Connell, and we know that the Vikings over the last few years have sort of been micromanaged by Mike Zimmer, who's more of a conservative coach, and they've leaned heavily on the run with Dalvin Cook to open up the pass. Kevin O'Connell is a guy who comes in from the Sean McVay tree. Those guys tend to do well. And, he's got Kirk Cousins, he's got Justin Jefferson, he's got Adam Thielen, he's got Dalvin Cook, pretty good interior guy in KJ Osborne, Irv Smith, the tight end. Something tells me that's going to team that's going to figure out how to score some points and probably get the best. I mean, you're talking about a coaching staff that had Jared Goff out there, did really well, and you've seen what Jared Goff is in Detroit, a lot different. So Kirk Cousins under O'Connell, I'm expecting he's probably going to be as good, if not better, than what he's been for his career. And again, his career numbers tell you he's pretty good.
Yeah, you mentioned, too, you're playing Detroit in week number 1. It's a road game. So some of your road games, you have a week when do they play? Houston is a Thursday night game on the road. So even some of your road games are against teams that, aren't projected to be playoff teams this year. So normally it's like, hey, playing on the road, it's a lot tougher. Well, you're playing Detroit on the road, not a playoff team. Washington, right, obviously. Arizona, Houston, not a playoff team and not thought to be a playoff team. I guess your toughest road game outside the division would be that Indianapolis game.
Yeah, that would probably be the toughest road game outside the division.
Right?
And I feel like this whole schedule, I feel like who or what Washington is can really change this schedule. I said this on the podcast that dropped this morning. People tend to always remember the last time they saw a player. So Carson Wentz clearly failed his team in the season finale. Then he got booted out of Indianapolis. Then there were bad things said about him again. But if you actually look at the totality of his season last year, he went good stretches where he played pretty good football at times last year.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 game stretches. Now, they leaned heavily on the run, but Washington does the same thing. Ron Rivera has always leaned heavily on the run.
Yeah.
And he comes to a Washington team that's got Jahan Dotson and McLaurin, and Logan Thomas will come back, and Antonio Gibson. So he's got some weapons. So it just depends on which Carson Wentz is going to show up for them.
Well, just on the home games.
If the good one does, that's a tough game.
Just on the home games, Mo. So I ranked, to me, the 10 most interesting players that will be in Philadelphia that the fans here can go and see. And this will give you some indication. In the 10 spot, I got the Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett duo, because it'll be the first time that somebody else is playing quarterback for the Steelers since 2004. But it also shows you that the schedule is a little light. Like Trubisky, to me, he's a boomer bust guy. He could be one of those guys that was the number 2 pick, just needed some time, sat on the sidelines last year. Maybe he got a chance to watch Allen, and we'll put it all together. Who knows?
Right. No, it's fascinating. And if it winds up being Kenny Pickett, that's the local guy from Jersey who grew up an Eagles fan, who the Eagles showed a lot of attention, played at Pitt. So I think either quarterback makes for a really cool storyline.
All right. The next guy that I gave you here, Mosher, is I'm having some here we go. Chris Olave, who was drafted number 11. You're going to get Olave, Michael Thomas, and Jarvis Landry. as your wide receiving core. But Olave was the pick that basically you gave to the Saints. Now, they ended up trading up again, but I think that's an interesting guy to watch this year on the schedule.
Yeah, and people forget Jameis Winston was playing pretty well last year before he got hurt. So, I mean, I know it was early in the year, and it was tough without him, and they don't have Sean Payton there anymore, but that team made moves this offseason that suggested they think they're really good, right, with the trades that they made. I mean, they traded a future first-round pick without even taking a quarterback, which shocked me.
Yeah.
So
you think Breeze is coming back? Yeah, he said, hey, I got fired from NBC. Said, hey, maybe I'll play football. Maybe I'll go play pickleball.
Maybe. We'll see. I mean, it wouldn't be the first guy to come out of first quarterback to come out of retirement.
Yeah, early. I feel like Brady retired at the top of his game or was still playing well. I think Breeze, everybody was like, all right, dude, like you might want to think about, getting out of this field.
I would think so, but I would think then he was still good enough that if you put Olave, as you just mentioned, you got Olave, Mike Thomas coming back.
Jarvis Landry.
Don't forget Marquez Callaway had a nice year for them too last year. We'll see what happens with Kamara. That might be enticing.
Okay. Next up on my list, this isn't like crazy, but Jim Schwartz is with the Titans. Now, I was thinking about today because one of the things Schwartz is known for, Moshe, is the work and production that he got from like Albert Haynesworth, Fletcher Cox. Like he's been known to have very good success with defensive tackles. And I wonder if he's looking at the Eagles now and saying, man, I wish I had some of this personnel.
Oh, he had some pretty good ones in 2017 and 2018, right? I mean, can't complain too much. He had Fletcher Cox. He had Michael Bennett to move inside at times.
He would have some linebackers finally.
Yeah, well, that he must. I'm sure.
Yeah.
He has that.
And by the way, he
also has. By the way, he's got one of the best young DTs in the league in Jeffrey Simmons.
Yes,
and I've heard some people say the Titans don't seem so threatening because of they've kind of tapped out. They're not that good, and now they've lost Julio and A.J. Brown, but don't forget they have a very, very good defense.
Yeah, well, and by the way, Schwartz is not the coordinator there. He is just a senior consultant, but there are a lot of people who gave him a lot of credit for the way their defense played last year, right?
Yeah, and that makes sense. I feel like from what I understand, even though that title seems very vague and collect a paycheck, it's not, that he has a lot of influence there.
All right, number 7 on my list here, Moshe. Get your thoughts on Kayvon Thibodeau and how he's going to be fitting into that Giants. Now, this is a guy that if he's a boom, you're going to have to deal with a pass rusher that they haven't had since like JPP, OC, the Michael Strahan, like that group of guys.
Yeah, they got kind of an array of pass rushers now because they had Leonard Williams, who's a good interior rusher. Now you add Kayvon Thibodeau, who's a good defensive end edge rusher. And then I think they had a pretty good year last year out of the kid from Georgia, Azeez Ojulari, as a kind of a stand-up edge rusher. So it'll be interesting. Plus, you have an entirely new defensive coordinator in Don Martindale who just loves to come at you with all sorts of cover zeros and crazy blitzes. So the Giants have some better personnel to be able to hit. And the Giants beat the Eagles last year in a very defensive-minded game. So now they just added to it.
All right. These are the list of the guys from the schedule that are coming to Philadelphia, all right? These guys are guys that you can see at Lincoln Financial Field. Number 6 on my list that I made, Geoff Mosher, is Trevor Lawrence, the former number 1 overall pick. Now, how do we think he's going to bounce back in year number 2? Most people say, hey, he's got Doug Pederson. That should help him out. But they went out and spent money at the wide receiver position to try to help him out as well.
Yes, they did. They spent a lot of money, maybe overpaid, as some say, but still brought some talent in. And here's another thing that we can't forget. It's like they're getting another first-round pick because Travis Etienne will come back to that offense. He missed his entire rookie year with the ACL injury. So they're getting a major influx of talent, not only in the coaching staff, but also on their offense. And I would expect them to be much improved over last year.
I think the good part about them is that you get them in week number 4. I think that's a team that by the end of the year might be playing much better. I think early they might, go through some growing pains.
I think that also about the Vikings because they're switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So whenever you see a team switching its defensive concept, much like the Eagles last year, everybody feasted off them in the first 5 or 6 weeks because they really didn't know what they were supposed to be doing and weren't comfortable with it until Jonathan Gannon just said, forget it. I'm going to do it differently.
All right. Speaking of the Vikings, number 5 on my list is Justin Jefferson. You'll see him in week number 2, 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns. They got Dalvin Cook. That's a Monday night home opener. So your first home game, this is one of the most interesting players you're going to see this year.
This is the type of game that you look on the schedule and you're like, oh man, what are if the Eagles don't get somebody at cornerback number 2, then I don't even want to watch this game. Because if they don't get and maybe even safety, they don't get.
Although the Minnesota is known for having a very porous offensive line.
They are, but they've been known for that for a while. I remember a game a couple of years ago in Minnesota. Was it 2019, where Kirk just lit up the Eagles secondary with touchdowns to Thielen and Stephon Diggs. I mean, everybody was, racing to get onto the field to get a touchdown against the Eagles.
All right, number 4. Now, I don't know if you would have him ranked ahead of Justin Jefferson, but I got number 4, most interesting visiting players or coaches, Derrick Henry, who was hurt last year but still had 937 yards and 10 touchdowns in only 8 games. And obviously that'll be A.J. Brown playing against his former team. But having to see Derrick Henry, hey, he's 28 years old. This might be the last chance you get to see a dominant version of him.
That's true. And this will be the first time he plays at the Link, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So, yeah. Now, this is the type of running back and running game that Eagles fans love and wish they had here. The big power running game that you never see anymore. So I think that they'll enjoy, as long as Eagles win, they'll enjoy it. But I think people will come to see
what their offense looks like. A lot of people are wondering what they'll look like without A.J. Brown in that offense. Treylon Burks now replaces him. Number 3.
Also, real quick, because that's a later in the season game. Can you imagine if something happens where Malik Willis is the quarterback and not Ryan Tannehill? That might be interesting.
December the 4th, Lincoln Financial Field. Number 3 might be the last time you ever get to see Aaron Rodgers in person. So if you get a chance to go to the Link, Aaron Rodgers will be in Philadelphia November 27th. That'll be right around Thanksgiving weekend. 38 years old, last chance possibly ever to see Aaron Rodgers in Philadelphia.
I assume last chance ever. You never know with Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, that'll be a treat for fans.
Now, he has been here a few times, and I feel like the Eagles beat them in Green Bay a couple of years ago on a Thursday night because Adam was on Friday, and he said the Eagles had never beaten Rodgers, and somebody tweeted at us as we were having the conversation, and then we remembered that they had beaten them there. All right, number 2 on my list is obviously Carson Wentz. That game, as you kind of touched on Wentz earlier, but I don't know, man. That Washington team, I think, has a shot to be pretty good.
I agree with you. Last year, I picked them to win the division. Remember, 2 years ago, that defense had been really coming together. Last year, they played terribly on defense for the first 6 weeks, which was really hard to understand. Chase Young just was not the guy, but I have a feeling they'll learn from that and they'll come back. They have good defensive personnel. They have better offensive personnel. Now, as I said in the pod today, sometimes Carson Wentz can play like Taylor Heineke, like a guy who's just kind of erratic and scattershot. But when he's better, when he's on his game, he's way better than Taylor Heineke. And you just wonder which Carson Wentz shows up for those games.
And number 1 is obviously Doug.
Who?
Doug Pederson.
Just kidding. Yeah, of course.
Doug Pederson coming back in week number 4. I would imagine they're going to do something for him. I would imagine some sort of video, some sort of something.
God,
think Wentz gets the same treatment?
Oh, if he doesn't get a standing ovation, I'd be shocked. I mean, we're talking 2 years removed now. I think most people don't even blame him.
No. I said, do you think Wentz will get the same treatment? Like the video, some sort of like welcome back?
He'll get something, but I don't think it'll be as.
I think Doug will be a ceremony.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like
I would agree with you on that.
It would be.
So no Micah Parsons, by the way, on your top 10, huh?
I thought about him, but, we've seen him here, so I went with some of the younger players like Thibodeau, quarterbacks, guys who were drafted this year.
I got you. That makes sense.
Because I probably, Dak Prescott would be higher on the list than Trubisky or Pickett, but I put those on there because of the fact that they are now taking over for Roethlisberger.
That makes sense.
Plus, I made a list for road games that I'll do with you maybe on Wednesday.
Okay, we'll do that then.
Hey, you know what? The offseason is here. We'll have a little fun. We got a lot of NFL Eagles stuff. Now, when we don't know, they don't have any scheduled OTA stuff coming up, do they?
I haven't seen it, so I don't. I know it's going to be starting pretty soon.
I was going to say, I thought it was going to start here shortly, where everybody's starting to get back, not just the rookies.
Right, correct. That should be soon.
All right, Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning, and a new one on Thursday. Adam's here tomorrow. Jeff's back on Wednesday, unless something changed, and you'll let me know.
I will.
Right.
Hopefully, I'll have my voice
get that voice
inoperable
back,
by then. Yeah.